Many foreigners, and even a fair amount of Americans, don't really understand the difference between the US's founding documents. Well, this video is meant to briefly explain what they mean in summary. The first thing to get out of the way is that there are actually 3 founding documents. Them being in order of publication, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Let's start with the first of these, written in 1776. The Declaration of Independence was written primarily by Thomas Jefferson, along with Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston. This document was put into effect July 4th, 1776, and marked what we know as Independence Day. DOI was the official document sent to King George III when the 13 colonies declared their independence from the United Kingdom, and was detailed with reasons and justifications for independence, along with a long statement at the beginning talking about how a government is meant to treat its people. It's a long one, but I believe it's important to read at least this aloud. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. This is just the first couple sentences. Talk about long-winded. Now, let's try to break this down. Let's start with their Creator. This is meant to be, at least for most people, God. However, it was written as Creator on purpose, and that purpose being, not everyone believed in the Christian God, and having this phrase in the middle of the statement is important. We'll get to that in a second. Now, looking at unalienable rights and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, this should obviously mean that every man has rights that no government should have the right to take away from them. The right to live, the right to freedom, and the right to live a happy life. And if we go back to that Creator mention, it starts to make sense. This beginning sentence alone states that, in a simplified term, all people are guaranteed the rights to live, happiness, and freedom by whoever it is they worship. This was selected as the first sentence to be read to the most powerful man in the world for a reason. Moving on, there's governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government. In a way to say it so that a normal person can understand it, this next segment states that governments are created by men and are only kept in power because the people want the government's protection, and that if said government attempts to take away those rights we mentioned earlier, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that the people have a right to change or replace said government with a better one that suits their freedoms and happiness. Interesting take that could be a controversial one, even today. Now that wasn't really a full look on the Declaration of Independence, but that should give you a look as to what exactly it encompasses and why it was sent to King George in the first place. Now, take a breather with this chill music, and we'll be back for the Constitution. The Constitution, written in 1787, is the most important document of the United States. This document was made to list the powers of the government, explain how it should function, and some limitations. Every law passed by a legislative body anywhere in the country, whether it be federal, state, or county, had to abide by the powers listed in this document, which is why debating if something is unconstitutional is a phrase used in the US when it comes to making laws. Article 1 explains the powers of our legislative branch, Congress. We'll get to how it works in another video down the line, so let's focus on its powers. Collect taxes and pay debts, print or borrow money, regulate domestic and foreign trade, create and pass laws through domestic process, manage mailing and road building, to create inferior courts to the Supreme Court, to declare war, and to raise and maintain an army. Whew. Congress has way more power than that, but that's the gist of their powers and role in the government. Moving on to Article 2, it covers the presidency and vice presidency. Time for another list. The president has the power to command all armed forces during wartime, and peacetime is a bit of a complicated subject, make treaties with Congress's approval, appoint the head of various executive departments meant to help run and maintain the country, as well as advise the president, and to veto or refusal to sign laws into place. Okay, that list wasn't that bad. To be fair, the president obviously has way more power, seen by a lot of modern presidents, but this is really the main things you need to know. Next is the powers of the Supreme Court, our third branch of government under the judicial branch. It has the power to override any law or treaty they believe is unconstitutional and therefore illegal to have in place, with many limitations. Yes, that is the only power that they have. It may not seem like much, but that power basically states that whatever the Supreme Court says in a ruling at the end of a case is automatically law and all within the country. Even the politicians must abide by them. The Constitution goes on to explain that each of the powers listed previously have great limitations and that other branches of government can override each other. This was to prevent corruption and tyranny. For example, if the government doesn't agree with the Supreme Court's new law, they can pass an amendment to override their decision. This was seen in the mid-1800s, where the Supreme Court ruled that all black men could not be citizens, no matter what, and could not sue for their own freedom. Congress overrode this decision by passing the 13th and 14th Amendments after the Civil War. Now that we've covered the Constitution, let's take another breather. I'll be back momentarily. Now that you had time to calm down that stinky brain of yours, let's move on to the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was the first 10 amendments after the Constitution was written, and was meant to share the rights of citizens. An amendment is basically adding on to the Constitution, so the Bill of Rights was the first 10 additions to the Constitution. I won't go over all 10, but I will go over a few. The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Alright, now this one should be fairly obvious. The people have the right to worship any religion at any given time, or none at all, the freedom to say basically anything, freedom for the media to say basically everything, and the right to peacefully protest the government. The Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This famously has to do with gun ownership, and it isn't really for personal protection like many would say, but that is an added advantage to owning a gun. But the right to own one was basically for protecting against invading forces, alongside tyranny. The 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. This one basically means that there are other freedoms, rights, and powers that are not listed, and is up to each of the respective states to decide which of these rights and freedoms go to the state itself or to its citizens. So that's a basic overview or summary thing for each of the founding documents and what they mean. I hope your knowledge on them has increased, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, or don't, that works too. Bye-bye.